When you think about all of the employees in this county and really this part of the state, almost every organization has a tie to ag production of some kind, whether that's cattle production or farming.
We've got so many different cattle feeding facilities, hog farms, dairies, and it really is the lifeblood of this whole, regional economy. We depend so much on agriculture. Without agriculture, there is no community basis, and so obviously water is a huge part of that. And so all of our conservation factors are all aimed at trying to keep this huge economy running because of what it provides not only for the state, but for the entire United States.
At the moment, our big focus is how do we identify improvements to management, the ways that we utilize the water in these agricultural operations that can hopefully prolong the water availability, but then also allow the aquifers to begin to, hopefully restore their capability, long term.
Over 100 years ago, a lot of farmers and homesteaders came out to this area and they began to farm. We found that we had a huge subterranean water source known as the Ogallala Aquifer. In the early days, we didn't have appropriation. We had no way to measure to know what was down there. Everybody thought it was an endless supply of water. We've since learned from using science, the Kansas Geological Survey, we have finite amounts of water in the region. In fact, it's a little more complicated than that. If you take an egg crate and flip it kind of sideways underneath the ground and fill it with sand, that's a good idea of what the subsurface geology is of an aquifer. You'll have these localized pockets of water, but when they get full enough, they migrate between them. And as they deplete, they'll pocket and they'll pool based upon the underlying geology. So what we have out here in this region, we have pockets of water that are still very, very good. And we have some areas that are very, very depleted, and yet everybody who's using the surface rights are all wanting the same outcomes. That desire to have uniform outcomes but not having the same amount of water underneath the ground is kind of what becomes the contentious thing, is that all producers want to end up essentially having the same lifestyles and have the same outcomes, but the truth is the water under their feet are not the same.
Individualized solutions are going to work best when it comes to policy implementation, and so that's why we really tried to focus on the local control aspect, because what is going to work for GMD1 it's not going to necessarily work for GMD2 or GMD5 or any of the others, because we're just so different in so many respects. Everyone recognized that we needed to do something to address the decline in the aquifer, but they really just wanted to make sure that it was fair and it was economically viable, and that everyone was a part of the process in putting those plans together. The locally enhanced management areas, or the LEMAs, kind of gave groundwater districts the ability to kind of put forth and implement their own kind of water conservation plans. And so the LEMA tool actually provided producers an opportunity to work with the board of directors to come up with their own plan for temporary water conservation efforts that could be then implemented by the chief engineer's office.
When we're thinking about groundwater depletion, and groundwater management, irrigation water management plans are really what we're after. Those irrigation water management plans include everything from new technology adoption to scheduling of water usage and applications on those crops. But then as part of a larger system, they can also include things like cover cropping, nutrient management, crop rotations to better utilize the water when it's available and at the rates that those various crops need.
I think Kansas has really great water law in a lot of respects. They've got great data, and I think that certainly helps in putting together good policy. One of the things that I like to kind of highlight to people, especially from other parts of the country, is the collaboration that you see between state and federal and local agencies in Kansas is unmatched.
There are three main state agencies that are involved with water, and the agency that regulates water quality is the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and they do permitting, regulating, enforcement for water quality matters, surface water and groundwater. There's an agency that regulates water quantity, who gets to use it. They're the water rights people, who has a water right, who doesn't, can they change it, can they not. They're permitting, regulatory, enforcement as well. The water office where I work is the third agency, but we're very different. We are not regulatory, we don't enforce or permit, but we're the policy and planning agency for the state. So we're in charge of developing the Kansas Water Plan, which by law we have to develop, that identifies all the water needs throughout the state, the issues, the challenges, and makes recommendations for what to do about them. And then it's our job to move that into implementation, which requires us to be working with the other agencies because we all have different roles and different responsibilities, but they all come into play in dealing with water issues.
It is so heartwarming to be able to sit down with people from other agencies and craft solutions for producers and feel like everyone is being heard.
You're seeing people across political lines, blue collar, white collar, scientists, policymakers, producers, feed yard and dairy operators, all working together going, what can we all contribute to the solutions of what we have going on? They're still remaining financially viable, they're using really good science, and you're watching communities work in tandem with their state governments in a real cooperative way.
When we look across the spectrum of all the organizations that can help us from a local level to a state level to a federal level, they all have a part to play in this process. And we at High Choice Feeders look at it as a collaborative relationship between all those agencies, whether government agencies or NGOs of some kind. They can come in and help our company because they have access to other resources, and it's not just financial resources, it's knowledge of different programs and services and resources and technologies that they can bring to the table.
So there's these win-win scenarios for practice using both technology, good management practices, which takes education, and then also the soil health practices of keeping active roots, crop rotation, good residue management. When you couple all that together, we have a toolbox full of very, very potent, useful things that we know make a difference.
What we've seen through the LEMAs that have been in place in Kansas is those in the LEMA have used even less than their targets, and they have been more profitable because they've had to employ more intentional management, exactly how much water they're using or not. There's technology available now to say whether or not you need to irrigate any given day. Is there enough soil moisture in there or not? And it turns out that you can use a lot less water and still be profitable in ways that people never thought were possible ahead of time.
Some of the good things they've learned and adopted here would work very good in areas that have more water and more rainfall, because they've learned to live and get by with less.
I would personally invite anyone who wants to learn more about water resources in Kansas to reach out to just your local NRCS or your local conservation district or your local groundwater management district. There is so much information out there, and I know, speaking for myself and for others in the field, that we really want to put a lot of emphasis on education and outreach. And so please reach out, go to a board meeting, attend a conference, and just don't be afraid to ask questions. These resources are just imperative to the success of our future communities, and we want to make all of these resources amply available.